Give you a minute to get your seats and then we'll get things rolling. It is really my pleasure today to introduce our APDS president, Dr. Amit Joshi. We've all known Amit for many years as a guy with really great hair, passionate about surgical education. But I've had the privilege to learn that he's so much more than that. Over the last year or so, I've gotten to spend almost every Friday on the phone or on a Zoom call with Amit, and this is going to be a Friday tradition that I miss. I'm not sure Val's going to be quite the same, but you know, actually I have to be careful because he gets to do this for me next year. But really those Fridays have been a real privilege to really get to know Amit. I've really gotten a small window of who he really is, and he's always been on a pedestal for me, and I have to say that he still is. He's really a phenomenal leader and even more so a phenomenal human. As part of this presentation, though, I also got to talk to his mother and his wife and his brother, so I actually got to know a little bit more about the real Amit. And then I've also talked to some people that have walked and worked with him closer than I have over many more years. So hopefully we'll all get to know Amit just a little bit better. Amit was born in India. He immigrated to the United States at the ripe old age of 5 months old. He initially lived in Denver, where his father began a hem-onc fellowship, and his brother was born soon thereafter. His mom and dad both were physicians, but his mom took a little bit of time off with an immigration and a second child. It makes it a little challenging to start a new residency right away, but eventually they moved to Baltimore where she did a psychiatry residency. He spent a lot of time with his grandparents during that time. His parents were both residents in the pre-80-hour work week, so you can imagine that was tough. But during that time, he really got to start watching out for his brother Arif, and they became very close over that time. They really had a phenomenal relationship, from what I understand, both from his mom and from Arif himself, who have both attested to this. But that also gave Amit a chance to start developing some leadership skills and and really started testing him out on his brother. And so I understand, if I'm part of an Asian family as well, where there are a lot of physicians, and whenever your parents are both physicians, there's some expectation that maybe that's the path that you also follow. But Arif was not really excited about that, even as a really young kid. And so I hear that Amit tried to test that resolve. What would you actually do for money? And so one day it had rained and Amit offered him a nickel to go drink the rainwater from the lawn. So really, that's kind of quite the grin of accomplishment, if you ask me. It really shows kind of almost what any of us will do for when Amit Joshi asks us to do anything, I think, really. Eventually, he put away his overalls and started going to a school that really fit his style just a little bit better, the Gilman School. The dress was a lot more Amit's style, and so I think that's how he chose the institution where he did his primary and secondary school. His high school years really were influential. He had an idol in high school whose name was Alex P. Keaton. Amit wore a tie and a jacket every day in school, but he doubled down on this and actually carried a briefcase every day and not a backpack. And as we all know, Amit is quite the snazzy dresser, and he was voted best dressed in high school ultimately. But Amit had to wear a jacket and tie every day no matter what, so you can see this was required. In college, though, he one-upped this and wore a bow tie every day. That's what I understand. At the Gilman School, sports were required. He went all in, though, and as he played water polo, he shaved his whole body in order to be a little bit faster and a little bit more successful at water polo. He picked up tennis at that time as well, and now the whole family are avid tennis players. Music was something instilled in Amit at a very young age, as we've all come to know. He started playing the piano at age 5. He ultimately became a vocalist because, like our bassist, he also wanted to be part of a group. And he was a tenor in multiple groups. He was really heavily influenced by one of his high school teachers, the director of the music department at Gilman, John Merrill, who also taught him to conduct. And if you think about an operating room, it's kind of like conducting an orchestra at times. Here are all his, I think all your high school classmates is what I understand. And they all dress like Alex P. Keaton. He then went to Brown University where he majored in music. He focused on piano and again in singing. And he was part of an 8-year program in college that combined liberal arts and medical education, aptly noted as PLME, Program in Liberal Arts and Medical Education. During this time, though, he had some consternations about his future. And again, he then started questioning his potential for the family business. The musicians he knew were better dressed than the doctors he knew. And surgery was way out of the picture because why cover the great head of hair? One of those consternations was maybe he needed to make the 3 tenors into 4. But in the end, that wasn't going to be a go. And so really what he wanted to do was be a conductor. But thank you to a few mentors, Mr. Merrill and Dr. Josephson at Brown. And then finding out that he's not the only Joshi that can make deals. His mom also can make deals. He was redirected to complete medical school, thankfully. During the PLME program, he fortunately met his wife, Nikki. So they actually just celebrated their 20th anniversary 2 days ago, so congratulations. Her parents, way back when, also attended the same medical school as Amit's parents. And so she was actually on the lookout for Amit, knowing that he also was part of this program. And their first meeting, though, wasn't that great. So Amit was manning the grill. He is a master chef, I hear. I'm not sure if the grill master was one of the early days of that, but he was manning the grill. And Nikki came up to request a cheeseburger. There's clearly no line. You can see no one else is waiting for a cheeseburger. But Amit said, absolutely not. She didn't wait in line, and he is not giving her a cheeseburger until she waits properly. So there was a lot of questions whether this could even be a friendship with his intensity of response, let alone a future actual romantic relationship. Eventually, they did get married, they did become friends, and even more than that, they went on a date at a fancy Italian restaurant where Amit was, of course, the perfect gentleman. But he did spend the evening initially interviewing her, peppering her with questions about her future and exactly how she was going to get there. And maybe this is all in the right vein, or maybe this was an early attempt at mentorship. But in the end, it ended well. So she became enamored with his resolve, with his forthrightness, and was really, obviously struck by him outside of his cheeseburger skills. In medical school, Amit excelled. One of his early mentors in medical school was our own David Harrington, however. And in reading his personal statement, it was clear that Amit wanted to become a plastic surgeon. And again, you can kind of imagine it. Again, the hair, the clothes, it all kind of fits. But what he really wanted to do was burns like David Harrington. In medical school, he did volunteer a good amount, and this is one of his major efforts. There was a major earthquake in India that really devastated a significant part of the country, and he did go with a group to assist with some of the medical relief in that effort. So again, his humanism and his liberal arts background really came out during this time. He graduated from medical school and went to Cornell for his residency, and then subsequently fellowship, where he became an MIS surgeon. During his residency time, Amit proposed, and he and Nikki were married. They began their adventures together, and Nikki is the perfect planner, I understand. I'm hoping to get her itineraries when we're all done. But they are an adventurous family for sure. And finally, they had their first child in 2008. So family is obviously extremely important to Amit. We know he pours his heart and soul into everything he does, and family is nothing different. And so his oldest is Layla, And then about 18 months later, Vikram came along. Now, Amit is an impressive father. He has some really important qualities and some ways in which he raises kids, things that I was not ever resolved enough to do, such as no toys with batteries, no TV, no computers. My kids did sit with iPad once in a while at a restaurant. I'm guessing his never did. So congratulations on that. Sorry, Layla. I told you ahead of time. So for this presentation, Amit was very clear about the pictures I could use and which ones could not be shown. And this was in the mix, and I did make a decision to put this in. But I do have one that was unapproved. And so revenge is sweet. And so I give you this in return. And so hopefully you both will forgive me. You can't all see it, but Amit had just been on a run, and there's, he was still a little hyper metabolic from that situation. Amit has passed on his love of music to his children, with Layla being a masterful organist and Vikram is a harpsichordist. Someday I want the picture of him carrying the harpsichord across town. I didn't get that one. And I hear they only practice on days they eat. So this QR code, if you're interested in looking at the Amit Joshi YouTube channel, though, will get you to the performances of Layla and Vikram, which are quite impressive. So I could honestly go on and on about Amit. He's just an amazing human, leader, father, surgeon, educator. I wish I could give you some evidence that he's not just a myth, or that he's not more than human. But so far, he really stays on the pedestal that I've always seen him on. And so those are my feelings, but I also want to give you a few of those who have worked closely with him over the years. So Dr. Klingensmith has worked with him in SCORE. Amit is a man of many layers. Just when you think you know him, he ends up having these talents and connections that are unexpected, especially and mostly in music. He has an easy laugh, always remembers people's names, and puts people at ease. I'm among many of his #1 fans. Dr. Beiske from the APDS, he's relentlessly positive. Amit always has a genuine smile, and when things are great, and also when things are rough. He's resilient. Amit always finds a way to bounce back, to reestablish relationships, and to pick up a project that has run aground. He never gives up. And leave it to the guy to be short and sweet, but Dr. Smink feels that Amit is organized, efficient, stable, and kind. Finally, we have one that always brings you back to earth. He's the kind of guy who gets his hair cut every week. It's a little scary. His hair never changes like a Ken doll. Why is it that he's a surgeon, but always calling in for Zooms at 5 p.m. after he's already played tennis? And finally, definitely an optimist, always likes everyone who would find something nice to say about Satan. So with that, I give you our president, Amit Joshi, where you might catch him on a run here at APDS. And if you're lucky, you'll get to run with him and you could keep up. Or he might be at a symphony in Amsterdam with his family. So, Amit.
Deep breath. That's what I was told to do first. Well, I can't even start to acknowledge, Dr. Choi, everything you've done with this incredible year of partnership. Those Friday afternoon calls are so much fun, and we took them everywhere. We took a couple internationally, certainly with our kids in the car. I have really counted on you and valued your middle of the road wisdom, counsel. The relationship between the president and the president-elect is really a wonderful one in our governance structure, and something I would never change. To the APDS officers, membership, ARAS president, Shah and members, ASC president, Mike Awad and members, keynote speakers, Kendall and Conyers, who moved us so incredibly this morning, distinguished international guests, and APDS members front and foremost. I wish you all a good afternoon and good evening. I do have a couple of disclosures. As you know, I have positions with the American Board of Surgery and SCORE and some leadership positions in the American College of Surgeons. As you would expect, and Jen covered some of this, I have to commence with some immense gratitude for people who really had an impact on me as both a person and a surgeon. Jen talked about Mr. Merrill, pictured here. My high school music teacher instilled in me just a love of music and arts. You'll see at the bottom left is Mr. Finney, my headmaster at Gilman, an incredible man, decorated war veteran from World War II, athlete, absolute scholar. And then Professor David Josephson on the right, who was my mentor in the Department of Brown. All three gentlemen leaders of integrity who really inculcated in me a profound love and respect for the fine arts, civil society, and rhetoric. The first surgeon I ever knew actually was my paternal grandfather. This is Dr. B.S. Joshi. He was born in Amritsar, India in 1912, the son of a Hindu priest. He was orphaned very early at age 4 and then moved to Burma to live with his paternal uncle. And he went on to study biology at Rangoon College. And this was followed by medical school on a full scholarship. After graduation in 1936, he was appointed as a civil surgeon in Burma, in the Burma Medical Service. He married my grandmother, who was also a classmate of his, a physician, and they got married in 1938, and my father was born in Tavoy, Burma in 1947. Eventually, my grandfather rose to the rank of Surgeon General of the Union of Burma. From an early age, sitting in his house, I reveled at his kitchen table in his surgical stories of operations done by candlelight on a kitchen table or in the deep jungle by the light of a jeep, of the tremendous importance of the dexterity of a surgeon. But more importantly, he was an evangelist for the sacred duty that surgeons have to hold towards their patients. In the words of my cousin, Madhuri Shankar, she's my first cousin, who's written about my grandparents, she says, both Bhavani, that's my grandfather's name, and Ratna, were dedicated and committed doctors to the people of Burma. Patients came to see them at their private practice in their home, both rich and poor. Those who could not afford treatment were treated anyway, and they were held in high regard all over Burma. So undoubtedly, from an early age, his influence on me had much to do with my eventual career choice, even with the slight detour. My mentors in surgical training from medical school were extraordinary. David Harrington, every time I see him, I remind him how long I've known him, mostly to make him feel a little bit older. But he wrote one of my letters of recommendation in the year 2000, and so I've known him probably since 1998. And through residency and fellowship, you'll see here Dr. Tom Fahey, my program director, Jeff Chan and Ken Fretwell were my faculty as a resident, and then I joined them as a partner at Jamaica Hospital in Queens. That was my first job for 3 years. And then my 2 fellowship directors, Gary Geselter and George Denoto, just incredible gentlemen. I then have to recognize some of the incredible people within this organization. I'm really grateful to all of those of you who have welcomed me into the APDS. This was my first meeting was 12 years ago in San Diego. Actually, this morning, I was a little nervous for this talk, so I woke up at 4:30, reviewed the talk a couple times, and then I actually figured, I wonder if I have any records of that meeting. I do. I have all my meetings going back. And it was the first one, and I have notes that go on for about 3 or 4 pages. And highlighted right in the middle it says, Paula Termulin, email her. That's exactly what it says. And the document is unchanged since 12 years ago. But Paula Termulin stood at this podium in a different city and said, please email me if you're interested in contributing to the society. And I did, and she responded. And as they say, the rest is history. Vijay Maker, who I think is always on this side of the room, I'm sure he's here, there he is, was also one of the first people to talk to me at a meeting, at a surgical meeting. We were out on the veranda in San Diego, and I believe his wife was there as well. And so I relay those stories, and I tell these stories often because there's something to learn from them for those of us sitting now on the other side. And so it's something I actually open the meeting with. When you're a surgeon who's feeling comfortable at a meeting and you see someone who's not feeling comfortable or you haven't met before, literally a handshake, a hello, a what's your name can make all the difference in the world. I have to also thank the independent program gang. So you'll see Jonathan Dort, Rick Sidwell, Ben Jarman, incredible friends and colleagues throughout all these years. And so I can't emphasize enough how much you've all meant to me. Over the past several years, it has been an incredible honor to have had the good fortune to collaborate with remarkable leaders within the APDS and the ASC, and you see many of them pictured here, and there's so many others as well. I'd like to specifically acknowledge for their efforts this year, certainly President-elect Jen Choi, past President Kyla Terhune, Program Chair Jen LaFamina, who has just put together an extraordinary program, Treasurer Carrie Rosenkrantz, Education Division Lead Julia Shelton, and Recruitment Task Force Chair Jennifer Surfin, as well as Mike Awad for his efforts in the ASC. I think I can confidently say the relationship between our two organizations has never been stronger, and that has very much to do with your leadership. It didn't take me long to figure out that everything that the APDS does and the way it functions and thrives is largely because of the behind-the-scenes efforts of our executive team. You'll see here on the left, Tom Fies, the administrative backbone of this organization for 35 years, whom we celebrated justly last year, and has helped me in countless ways. I often think of him as he enjoys his retirement in Baltimore. I texted him the other day. Since we last saw him, he's had another grandchild, and another one is on the way. He's healthy and enjoying his vacation, his many vacations during retirement. I hope you've all had a chance to meet Margie Malia and Jill White, our LP co-leads. They've been only with us for 6.5 months, and it's absolutely remarkable to think about that. They've been outstanding partners to me personally, but also to the association. They have applied meticulous organization, professionalism, and creative modern thinking to the APDS, and have really transformed our association. I'll talk more about that in our membership meeting, which follows this address. But they really deserve significant credit for the accomplishments in communications, financial stewardship, and collaboration. So I thank them wholeheartedly. It's obviously human nature to love to talk about one's children. We're surgical program directors, so our children are our trainees. And I love talking about my trainees. At the end of the day, after all, they really are our work product. They're the product of our blood, sweat, and tears. The young surgeons we recruit and train who then go on to serve, to heal, and to educate. I was so lucky to have had a role in the careers of all of these young people at Einstein, and I'm incredibly proud of what they've already accomplished. Of course, we don't raise surgical families in isolation, just like we don't at home. I was lucky to have two incredible administrators. The administrators in the audience will recognize them as Lauren Hook and Carly Wagner, perfect co-parents to me for the Einstein surgery residency family that we raised together. And Doug McGee, an emergency department physician by trade, Einstein's formidable GME leader and DIO, who has long served as my wise counselor. I'm frequently reminded of something John Potts once said up here at this podium about the potentiating impact of program directors, whereby in just a few or several years, we can set off a chain reaction through our mentorship, our guidance, and our expectations on hundreds of surgeons, yes, but in turn, thousands of patients. I believe that this is indeed good work that we do as program directors. I found meaning in many of the world's faiths, particularly as they manifest through individual rituals, music, and architecture. So indulge me for a minute or two as I briefly review the history of Sikhism, which many of you may not be familiar with, whose traditions and customs our family is closest to. It's a relatively young faith, having developed from the teachings of Nanak, who lived in the northwest region of India called Punjab. He lived from 1469 to 1539. And he's regarded as the first of 10 living gurus or teachers. After the last of those 10 gurus died in 1606, their collective teachings were compiled into a book called the Guru Granth Sahib, which is regarded as the eternal guru, will live on even after the flesh of individual human beings have expired. And amongst Sikhs, there's much reverence and ritual afforded and devoted to this book. The Granth Sahib was then installed in the Golden Temple, which if you ever get a chance to go to, is a truly magnificent piece of architecture, completed in 1589. There are two words that are central to Sikhism, and they are kar seva. So kar meaning hands or work, and seva meaning service. You'll see this is the Gurumukhi script at the top. It's a derivative of Sanskrit, related to Hindi. Sanskrit is a derivative of Persian. It's a beautiful language. And so everything in Punjabi is actually written in Gurumukhi, as you can see at the top. So another way to translate this is voluntary labor. And that can be whether for ministry, for altruistic philanthropy, or humanitarian endeavors. If you ever go to a Sikh temple or a gurdwara, literally the door of the teacher, one of the most accessible ways to witness and engage in seva is to participate in langar. So langar is the community kitchen, as you can see pictured here. And if you go to any gurdwara, it basically looks like this. You'll see everyone is seated on the ground as a profound symbol of humility and equality. And volunteers, and this could be you, the very first time you go to a gurdwara, you need no special training. Layla has done it multiple times. Perform their seva by walking around to serve out literally some of the most delicious food you'll ever eat. To give you a sense of scale, at the Golden Temple in Amritsar, 150,000 people are served daily in the langar hall. And at every gurdwara, small or large, anywhere in the world, anyone, regardless of station or creed, can partake of langar. Okay, so how does this relate to the APDS? Well, first, the principles of humility, equality, and reverence for books and knowledge are universal and apply broadly to the mission of the APDS. Second, I'd like to convince you all to throw yourselves into Kar Seva wholeheartedly, particularly as it pertains to engagement in our robust civil society in America. Alexis de Tocqueville, someone actually David Harrington referenced in his presidential address, and one of my favorite authors from history, he wrote De la démocratie en Amérique in 1835 and observed about Americans, quote, "The people is therefore the real directing power. And although the form of government is representative, it is evident that the opinions, the prejudices, the interests, and even the passions of the community are hindered by no durable obstacles from exercising a perpetual influence on society. That perpetual influence on society by its people is Kar Seva. It is the ability of individuals to impact and improve their world through their own efforts." So I'll be more direct. We need you, each and every one of you, to participate in improving surgical education. Not only is it good for our programs, for our trainees, I'd argue it's good for you. Ezra Klein, a New York Times columnist, recently wrote, just a month or two ago, quote, "The social networks made it easy for anyone we've ever met, and plenty of people we've never met, to friend and follow us. We could communicate with them all at once without communicating with them individually at all. Or so we were told. The idea that we could have so much community with so little effort was an illusion. We are digitally connected to more people than ever and terribly lonely nevertheless. Closeness requires time, and time has not fallen in cost or risen in quantity." I think his point is that collaboration and engagement in civil society nourishes our souls because it requires effort and because it demands an investment of time. So with that call to action, let me give you some evidence of the power of collaboration in our world here. I will focus on projects that have been led by our program directors to improve surgical education. I often cite this paper, and you've seen it cited quite a few times today, because it was truly a watershed moment in surgical education. The first Blue Ribbon Commission was charged with charting a course through 4 specific things: expanding horizons of surgical science, of genetics and tumor biology, for example, increasing the corpus of knowledge that trainees needed to master, changing practice patterns, including the advent at that time of minimally invasive surgery, endovascular surgery, combined with changes in diseases. So for example, the decrease of peptic ulcer surgery and penetrating trauma that changed the kinds of operations that were being performed. Duty hour restrictions, which have been spared no discussion, including an 80-hour work week that decreased the amount of time that trainees were allowed to be in the hospital. And I remember John Potts at that same address doing some back of the napkin calculations. So at the time, a decrease from 100 hours a week to 80 hours a week translated to a loss of 24 weeks over 5 years. And most of that reduction in time was during nights and weekends, when arguably trainees enjoyed the most autonomy and independence. Finally, a growing perception that there was unacceptable heterogeneity in training programs, coupled with a historically poor general surgery match in 2001. If you were paying attention, I matched in 2001. Probably the most durable result of the commission was that the formation of SCORE happened, the Surgical Council on Resident Education, founded as a nonprofit in 2004 by 7 major societies, including the APDS. SCORE's mission was to improve training through the development of a national curriculum. Over the next several years, that curriculum was devised and deployed on a web-based platform. Subscription started in 2010, and by 2019, the vast majority of programs use SCORE. Subsequent to that, curricula have been rolled out in the specialties of pediatric surgery, vascular surgery, surgical oncology, and surgical critical care. So I have to pause here for a moment to recognize some of the wonderful people at SCORE who are in this room. First of all, I was recruited to SCORE by Mark Malangoni, who with Mary Klingon-Smith and Mark Hickey shepherded SCORE through its decade of deployment and subscription growth on a web-based platform. They have been truly wonderful mentors to me. Since SCORE formally joined the American Board of Surgery in 2019, I have had the honor of working with Jo Beiske. No stranger to this group, she is forward-looking, thoughtful, and decisive. Our SCORE staff is, in a word, incredible. Carrie Barrett, our managing editor, James Giblin, our business analyst, Liz Mooney, content management specialist, and Mads Bradley, digital media specialist. When I describe them, I describe with absolute honesty that they fundamentally believe that the work they do on a day-to-day basis to improve SCORE, improve surgical training, which improves the care our trainees give to patients. It's worth remembering what SCORE looked like in 2013. A collection of learning objectives and references. And as rudimentary as this looks now, this is revolutionary. Consensus had finally been achieved on what was in scope for general surgery training. And I'll reiterate that even that work, with the vast majority of it, was done by program directors from the APDS through their own sweat equity. This is what a typical module looks like now. This module authored by Marcy Feynman, one of our editorial board members, really a dramatic transformation. And this is over about 10 years. Still peer reviewed, but now with the actual information in a bulleted format, richly hyperlinked, with visual cues and images, accessible in a mobile-friendly way. The way SCORE appears now is truly a testament to iterative improvement. And our mantra is, let's make it a little bit better every single day. Here's another way to express SCORE's content. Over 1,000 modules and 5,000 multiple choice questions across 6 specialties, all done by program directors, faculty, and trainees. For sure, we've periodically modernized the site, trying to keep it current and appealing. And SCORE continues to innovate through its content. Because of a collaboration with Emory University, thanks to Keith Delman and Alfred Shaheen, we've produced 120 high-quality anatomic illustrations, each produced by surgeons for surgeons. The pandemic in 2020 precipitated a dramatic change in surgery trainees' access to local didactic conferences. In response, SCORE developed a series of narrated lectures called SCORE School, delivered by content experts to allow trainees across the country to continue their structured education, even in the absence of organized local lectures. This series had enduring popularity and so has been continued and expanded with now 176 lectures produced. And our goal is to have a SCORE School webinar associated with each of the general surgery modules and eventually all of the modules across the entire curriculum. It'll probably take 2 to 3 years for the general surgery and a couple more years for everyone else. From January 2022 to August 2023, these video assets have been viewed over 100,000 times. At this meeting, we've been very excited to share with you the deployment of our long-planned mobile app. Version 1 is focused on multiple choice question and is currently being reviewed by the Apple Store for distribution. I made a plea earlier, if anyone has any contacts at Apple, send them my way. Versions 2 and 3, which are planned for the next few years, will provide mobile-friendly features related to modules and all the multimedia resources I described earlier. Overall, the app represents a $1 million investment by the American Board of Surgery to potentiate SCORE's utility. I'm hopeful that the mobile app will result in more bedside use of SCORE to take care of patients. And I also think it'll be the eventual key to providing SCORE to those practicing surgeons who wish to benefit from this rich repository of information. In terms of content, other projects are underway. We're preparing curricula for the endocrine surgery fellowships, for trainees who are preparing to deploy to the military after residency, informatics, and for trainees who undertake international rotations from so many of our programs. Through a productive collaboration with Lee Grimm and the University of South Alabama, we continue to invest in operative videos for our most common procedures. And of course, SCORE is actively looking to see how best we can couple with the EPA project that is rolling out across general surgery. So what does the data show? Recall that the founding goal of SCORE was to provide uniform access to educational resources across the continuum of surgical training programs. In this study from 2019, we found equal usage of across all types of programs and geography. So whether one trains in New York City or the Central Valley of California, one not only has access to peer-reviewed, continually updated national surgical curricular resources, but this study demonstrated that residents are actually availing themselves of the resource equally. We have studied SCORE usage and its correlation with ABSITE performance. Trainees with high SCORE and TWIST usage consistently achieved a higher ABSITE percentile score. This difference was maintained in subgroup analysis by PGY level, with the greatest impact in PGY1 and PGY2 levels. SCORE has fundamentally changed and improved the way in which we train surgeons. I'm confident that with the ongoing work and support of the APDS, SCORE will continue to produce innovations in both content and technology that fulfill its mission. You've all seen some version of this slide before. Our careers as physicians subdivided into clear silos marked by start and end dates and ascribed with specific responsibilities and privileges. So in my case, on June 30th, 2007, I was still a GME trainee working under supervision. One day later, I was an independent surgeon at Jamaica Queens with few restrictions within my delineated privileges on what I could do. This somewhat absurd framework largely persists to this day. Here I plugged in some of the organizations that exercise oversight and governance over all of these different domains and play a role. Most stay within their specific lanes. Some, like the American Board of Surgery, have a role in both GME and CME. Similarly, the American College of Surgeons, particularly the Division of Education, while largely focused on independent practice, has long produced high-quality programs, products, and services for trainees and students. I'll pause for a second to draw your attention to Firefly. You've heard about Firefly several times today and yesterday, whose leads Dr. Ruchi Tanawala and Jonathan Jesenek are making steady progress to bridge the gap between surgical evaluation and hospital electronic medical records, to finally and actually link assessment to patient care. Each of these organizations collects data, yet even now in 2024, very little sharing of that data occurs amongst them. Of course, individual programs interact with each one of them. There's some sharing of data, of course, between ERAS and the NRMP. There's some transfer of case log information and board exam success between the ACGME and the board, but very few other examples. Many will remember, and it was mentioned this morning, I know, the implementation of significant restrictions on intern duty hours in 2011. This generally led to the creation of night float services across many of our programs. Under the leadership of Carl Villamoria and with buy-in from the ACGME, the ACS, and the ABS, the first trial randomized programs to 2 arms of duty hour restrictions with a primary outcome of NSQIP measured patient outcomes. 117 of our APDS general surgery programs participated. And what resulted was this 2016 paper that showed no difference in patient outcomes. A year later, with data in hand, the ACGME was able to relent on its strictest duty hour limitations. When you think back, that was groundbreaking. It remains one of the few examples of elegant research being applied to the study of residency training regulations. My friends, we need more of this research. We whine incessantly about the regulations imposed upon us by accrediting organizations, of citations derived from resident surveys. What if we had a program director-led quality improvement program that could allow us to measure our program's outcomes and allow us in a non-punitive, citation-free manner to actually improve our residencies? Well, we do. Surgery program directors took notice and started to think about meaningful, data-driven research. Several successive presidents incorporated research into strategic thinking. First, the Mark Friedel Research Foundation was formed, honoring one of our finest presidents. Starting in 2020, the APDS and SCORE worked over the course of 9 months on a scoping plan for EQIP, the Educational Quality Improvement Program, eventually achieving consensus on the data metrics and endpoints that EQIP would measure. A beta test of a small group of programs was then carried out to test the survey with its instruments and confirm feasibility of the document downloads from the ACGME, ERAS, and the ABS. In the first year, we worked with a nonprofit technology firm called TLI. 36 programs were able to submit data. It's worth noting that many more programs, 150, were interested, but found the legal and technological hurdles insurmountable. Indeed, each of the 36 programs that ended up submitting data required one-on-one meetings with a surgeon as well as a data analyst to get through the data download and upload process. Very cumbersome. But we found some data in the end, and these are snapshots of what year one looked like. Rudimentary, I will admit. But remember what those early versions of a score module once looked like. Here, an EQUIP program could compare their trainees' ABS results versus others. In this slide, we can observe one of the fundamental use cases for EQUIP. This was a question asking PDs to describe their protected time. We all know, because we're program directors, that the ACGME requires at a minimum 30% protected time for general surgery PDs. Yet here, roughly 10% of EQUIP PDs reported their time was lower. No citations resulted from this. Site visitors didn't descend upon these EQUIP hospitals. Yet these PDs, if they felt that they needed more protected time, could make a strong case to their chairs or DIOs with comparative data from other programs. And I'll go a step further. If these PDs did not feel like they needed more time to be effective in their roles, that tells us something too. Because eventually, with a robust enough database, we will be able to answer this simple question: is the 30% requirement reasonable or not? What will the evidence show? How are educational outcomes impacted by a PD's non-clinical time? And that's just one data point that we can derive a question from. Basic demographics were included, along with information about applicants to programs. I'll explain one detail here. EQUIP relies on multiple identifiers to link actual trainees across several databases. The NPI number is the linchpin. So from that, we've been able to link ABS, ERAS, and ACGME identifiers. So much like the Rosetta Stone pictured here allowed hieroglyphics to be translated from Greek, EQUIP allows physician trainees to be followed from medical school through GME and board certification and into independent practice. At the end of the first year, we were able to run a simple multivariable analysis using board pass rate as the primary outcome. And out of the 36 programs who participated, we had 2 low and 1 high outlier. The EQUIP Consortium's first paper was published in JSC in 2022 and included that cohort of 36 program directors. Looking back, we realized that our first version of EQUIP had been built on a shoestring budget as a proof of concept, so we started to focus our efforts on building a sustainable future, and that meant identifying a proven partner. You've seen this slide several times today. It became quite evident that Simple was that partner. And as you heard earlier, founded in 2011 by Dr. Deb DeRosa, initially housed at Mass General, Northwestern, and Indiana University, for 2 decades, Simple has deployed a standardized operative performance measurement system in hundreds of programs, generating 200,000 evaluations by 5,000 faculty and residents. You know that Simple is an AHRQ, patient safety organization, and that was appreciated as a key attribute to eventually allow EQUIP to move beyond the training environment and actually into independent practice. And Simple already had a rich experience as a network of networks, with collaborations and data sharing agreements with organizations like the ACGME, the AMA, and the National Board of Medical Examiners. The APDS-sponsored EQUIP network fit into this framework seamlessly. Simple has already been at the forefront of using data to predict resident readiness. Here, for example, studying the impact of case difficulty, and here on PGY level and specific type of case. Last year, President Kyla Terhune signed a 2-year agreement between Simple and the APDS. I should take a moment to recognize the core group who have been working on EQUIP so diligently. David Harrington, the lead, Kristen Conrad-Schnetz, and Dan Rellis from the APDS side, and Andy Crum, Greg Winook, and Brian George from Simple. Over the last year, EQUIP has been thoroughly updated and the interface simplified. Here's the fundamental flow of information in EQUIP. Programs download reports from the ACGME, the ABS, and the AAMC, and then upload it to Simple. That process literally now takes a few minutes and no longer requires the handholding. As of this week, 46 programs have participant use agreements in place after legal review at their hospitals, and 25 have successfully uploaded their de-identified data to EQUIP. Here are some screenshots of the ACGME download window. And this is the first version of a program director dashboard that we have been working on and prioritizing. Eventually, we hope that EQUIP will be the go-to destination for program directors and administrators who need to get information about their programs and trainees. A preloaded roster contains current and past residents with eventually all the data associated with them: case logs, milestones, ABSITEs, QECE results, score usage, EPAs, demographics, and other characteristics. It's the dashboard that will finally integrate all of those different data streams. It includes specific questions about how a trainee has progressed in the program. PDs are currently able to compare their programs against others through eQuip. Here, a filter has been applied for a specific type of program to obtain a more precise comparison. And here to filter for size. Here's an in-depth analysis of the spread of your trainees on their ABSITEs by scaled scores. This allows comparison of residents within your training program, which has become an additional priority for us to make sure that it's not just comparing trainees to other trainees in other programs, but comparing your own trainees within your own programs. And finally, a comparison of trainees across 24 programs. But now it really starts to get exciting. By coupling eQuip's trove of data with Simple's hundreds of thousands of operative case evaluations, we can start to make predictions about which particular residents are practice ready in which particular cases. This is actionable intelligence that will let program directors and administrators in real time adjust their trainees' experience to best prepare them for their eventual career paths, and to transition our surgical training paradigm from one based on time to one underpinned by demonstration of competence. Okay, let's take a deep breath, because I've taken you on a whirlwind tour of eQuip, but that brings us to the present, the right now. But just ahead, always, inevitably, is the future. So what's next? Well, first, the APDS was invited to participate in the second Blue Ribbon Commission, which was convened by the American Surgical Association, the college, the board, and the ACGME. 20 years had passed since Blue Ribbon Commission 1, so Blue Ribbon Commission 2 was charged with considering contemporary issues that impact surgical education and with making recommendations to optimize training in general surgery and its related specialties today and in the future. A dozen APDS leaders participated and led in this effort that looked at everything from curriculum to assessment, structure and finance, research, and career longevity. The Commission's findings and recommendations are all forthcoming in a series of Annals of Surgery papers expected in the next few months. We will all need to read and consider these as we think collaboratively about what surgical education will look like in the next 10 to 20 years. My grand vision, as I think you've heard, revolves around an interconnected data ecosystem whereby we can truly apply evidence-based principles to constantly improve the way we accredit, educate, and train future generations of surgeons. I foresee eQuip at the nexus with incoming information from all our partner organizations. Program directors and administrators with credible data at their fingertips will help to collaboratively shape the accreditation standards that regulate programs. I know that sounds a little ambitious. I believe someone described me as never giving up, so that might apply here. And I understand that this may be a couple of years off, but if we focus on making it a little bit better every day, eventually we will be able to look back and marvel at the progress we've made. As we contemplate the future, it's critical to stay nimble and be willing to adapt and change. This is hard for us. Think about your reaction when your preferred mesh or suture or stapler or circulating nurse is not available. It throws us off. We don't like change, particularly when it's imposed upon us, whether it be in the operating room or in our programs. As work was progressing towards formation of the United Nations after the Second World War, Winston Churchill said, quote, "Never let a good crisis go to waste," one of Joe Beiske's favorite expressions. Indeed, when disorder and uncertainty abound, there is also ripe opportunity to execute change. A personal example for me is the amazing life lived by my grandmother, Surjit Kaur Sidhu. She and I had a special bond, perhaps because I was her eldest and obviously favorite grandchild. She was one of the most important people in my life, and I'd like to take a minute or two to tell you about her. She was born in 1924 in Lyallpur, in present-day Pakistan. Her father was a farmer, just like several generations before him. Luckily for her, despite his own lack of education, he believed strongly in the education of all his children. She was the first in her family to finish secondary school and then earned a bachelor's degree in geography at Women's College in Lahore. Between 1945 and 1947, their world was thrown into chaos by the partition of India. which displaced upwards of 20 million people and resulted in the deaths of 1 million of them. Truly one of the most chaotic and deadly mass migration events in humanity's history. Her family was relocated across the newly created India-Pakistan border to a village called Firozpur, just outside the town of Rupnagar, or also called Ropar. This is the earliest picture of my grandmother, dating to 1946, just prior to her marriage. She and my grandfather, who was an army officer, went on to have 3 children, the eldest of whom is my mother, pictured here in the middle. Mom's here in the second row. When I think of the arc of my grandmother's life, I am awestruck. Raised in a village without electricity or plumbing, migration in the midst of chaos, she witnessed the advent of the telephone, the automobile, the jet age, space travel. Her 3 children moved across the world to the US and Canada. Yet her approach to unrelenting change was with a brave face and determination. Surely a model for us all. The other aspect of the future I would like us to advocate for is appreciating and upholding the value of our uniquely American melting pot within the broader world. This was one of my favorite books in childhood, a celebration of the spectrum of humankind on Earth. Half a century later, the cover illustration of this book could very well be titled America. Our unique experiment in democracy, with all its blemishes, remains a beacon for people from around the world. We need to work together to make sure that American medicine continues to attract the best and brightest from all corners of the earth. I am particularly pleased with the relationships the APDS has started to build with our sister organizations globally, including the Royal College of Surgeons in Edinburgh and its Faculty of Surgical Trainers, COSEXA, the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons, the Royal College of Surgeons in Canada, and the Pan-African Academy of Christian Surgeons. Representatives from these groups convene at the triennial ICOSET meeting, the next of which will be in 2025 in Scotland. I would truly encourage all of you to get involved with this effort to collaborate globally. When I think of the intersection of international and American medicine, I can think of no better example than my mother, one of my other heroes. You saw Mom a few slides ago at age 2. Well, she eventually went on to medical school at Christian Medical College in Ludhiana, graduating in 1969, pictured here. She completed her training in pediatrics. Just after I was born in 1975, she and my father emigrated to the US. I often wonder why they came. Why take that leap of faith? Their answer to this question is hardly different from the answers I received from so many of my own international surgical residents that I recruited at Einstein. They came for the quality of training, the ability to contribute substantially to their chosen field, and to participate in the promise that is America. After a few years in Denver, my younger brother was born in Denver. We all moved to Baltimore because Mom matched at Hopkins, where she would go on to retrain in psychiatry and eventually child psychiatry. By any measure, she has had a stellar career. She rose to the ranks at Hopkins for 2 decades until she was recruited to National Children's Hospital to be the chair of psychiatry, where she spent 17 years. She has served as chair of the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology and president of the American Association of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. She became an international expert in mood disorders and the impact of war and conflict on children. She has been the personification of mentor, sponsor, and advisor to countless psychiatrists. So how to describe Mom? Strict and with very high standards of civility and decorum that have never softened, no matter how old I am or how much gray hair I have accumulated. To use Yumi's words, a lot of extrinsic motivation. Also the hardest working person I have ever known, and someone enormously grateful to have trained and practiced as an American physician. I'll close with an expression of deep gratitude for my family. You can see here pictured my wonderful father-in-law and my brother and his family. And especially to my wife, Nikki, the smartest person I know, a respected and beloved radiologist, and my best friend in this life we've built together. It was our 20th wedding anniversary on Wednesday, and I enjoyed spending it all with all of you, but I'm much happier that she's here. And for the 2 creatures I love most in the world, Layla and Vikram. Layla is here today. I see so much of my grandmother, my mother, and my wife in her. Fearless, diligent, and charming. Vikram can't be here, but he has an important rehearsal tomorrow that he couldn't miss. He's back home. Our boy has a heart of gold. He's empathic, insightful, and hilarious. It gives me abundant joy that Mom, Nikki, and Layla can be here to meet so many of my APDS friends, and that you in turn can interact with these special people in my life. And finally to you, the APDS, for what has truly been the highest professional honor in my career to serve as your president for this past year, I say thank you.
I think there are no more words to express our gratitude, but thank you very much for everything.